How many fights have you been in overall in your career?
Over 164, yeah. The only reason I know that is because I have a concussion lawsuit against the NHL, so it's like my lawyer's like, hey, you know that you were in 164 fights?
Welcome to the Daru Strong Podcast. Daru Strong Podcast.
So I want to go over like the start, like, first origin story, right? Who you are, because you've done a lot, right? And you've been through a lot. So let's go from the start of it. Like, when did you start playing sports? You got into hockey, and now from there, what are we doing?
Yeah, so I grew up in Canada.
Yeah.
Like, you come out of the womb with skates on, pretty much.
Yep.
I grew up in a small town. It was like 7,500 people, and
7,500.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. So it was like a farming town, and
Gotcha.
The whole community revolved around the rink, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just really, really competitive. Like everything is, but especially hockey.
Yeah.
And so I was just drawn to the sport from like an emotional standpoint, where you can go to the rink, you can leave life outside of the rink, and you can work towards a common goal with a bunch of guys, right?
Gotcha.
That are all kind of like-minded. And I just really liked the fact that like competition.
Yeah.
And then in hockey, like there's no out of bounds, right? So like you can, it's a wonderful anger management.
Were you naturally competitive?
Yeah. I was a middle kid. So like that middle syndrome, I think you're a middle child, and just wanted to, for whatever reason, some people like the more eyeballs that they have on them or the bigger the game, some guys shy away. I just used to,
you rose to the occasion.
I loved it.
Yeah.
The more people that watched it, and I just really liked the game. You know what I mean? Like a lot of kids around me when we were growing up, and still in Canada, they're like, their parents are going to push them. You're going to make the NHL. You have to make the NHL, or else you're less than. My parents never said a word to me about playing any sports. I could do whatever I wanted.
You naturally wanted to make it happen for yourself.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
And I was like a confused kid. Like a lot of us, I think, were like growing up. And I was just like,
how though? Like, explain that a little bit more.
So I'm an empath, so I'm like very sensitive. And I feel a lot, feel things. And my parents were like just old school Italian, and like it's 3 boys, and now I get it because I'm a parent to 3 kids, having a 4th. And we used to just beat the shit out of each other, So like, and like my oldest son, or even when my daughters pull each other's hair, I'm like, I get mad because not because I don't love them, I don't want to see them hurting each other.
Of course, yeah.
So now I get it. My mom, right? She would just lose her shit. But, I just don't think that back then it was so normal, but it affected me, like personally, right? Like I had a lot of frustration and anger. That luckily I was able to take out on the rink, and like I think back to it in my small town, like my mom, poor thing, like had to walk around with these other parents, and I was just bulldozing these kids, like everybody like hated my mom, because like I was just
so funny, man.
Just different. It was just different, and I played AA my whole life, so not the top league.
Explain that a little bit more for people that don't know what that is.
Yeah, so in Canada, there's single A, there's double A, and then there's triple A.
Okay.
In MMA, there's like different tiers, right?
Yeah, it's
so
like regional scene.
Yeah.
You got your amateurs, you got your pro, regional, and then you go into like UFC, Bellator.
Same type. It's just like select, beginner, select, elite. Same type of thing. So if you're not playing triple A at your age group in Canada in hockey, you're not at the top level. You're not playing against the top level talent, so you're not getting scouted really, right?
Gotcha.
At double A, single A. So I was always the best player in double A. I just really liked this coach. And my parents, they couldn't have 3 kids in triple A. It's just like super expensive.
It gets expensive the higher you go. Gotcha.
Yeah,
okay.
like even back then we were paying $3-4 grand a kid.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Plus the equipment.
Is was that per season or
per season? Just to register on top of the sticks.
College, I believe it.
Yeah, man, it's an expense, but that's why there's not much reach into other community. Like the rink costs a lot of money to upkeep. I used to own a rink when I first retired, and but so I played double A, so I always had a chip on my shoulder. I always had something to prove. And then I just happened to. One year there was an opening for a team in the middle of the season. I had a falling out with my coach, so I went to try out for this AAA team. And there was this guy, Anthony Stewart, on the team where he was like the #1 prospect in hockey. So every single fucking scout was at every single game, and I ended up making the team with 2 practices.
Yeah, showed out. Yeah.
Yeah, and like I started on the 4th line with like 2 guys that were still amazing players, but and I just worked my way up.
That's dope.
Got drafted in the 6th round to the OHL at 16 years old.
Wow.
You get drafted early.
That's crazy.
The OHL is a Canadian hockey league, so it's a developmental league.
Okay.
So
you're not going to school at this point then?
I'm in high school.
You're in high school.
Yeah.
You staying in high school and you still get signed or what?
Yeah, I got drafted to the NHL. I was
That's fucking insane.
I was a junior.
Going to
You're going to, yeah, he's like,
Going
I'm
to
in
practice.
homeroom and shit, bro. About to fucking make this happen on TV.
Oh yeah,
That's crazy. That's cool.
It was pretty wild. So the developmental league in Canada, if you want to fast track to the NHL, is the Canadian Hockey League, it's called. So a lot of guys move away from home at 15 years old, 16 years old, live with a billet family. You go to high school, and then you're playing against the top talent in Canada. But a lot of American kids are there too in this league.
Yeah.
And that's where you get scouted to the NHL.
Okay.
There's some kids that choose to go to university, but I went to Cornell, I went to RPI. I was like, I loved school, still do. I love learning and curious guy. But I just chose, I'm like, hey, if I'm going to make it, I get a school package here. So if I don't make it, I could always go back to school.
Yeah.
And I just rolled the dice because then, like, what am I going to do? I'm going to be playing against kids that are coming out of university at 22, getting into the league. Meanwhile, I graduated high school. I turned pro at 18 and a half, 19.
Nice.
Yeah.
So, all right, now you're pro. Where'd you play again?
So I got drafted to the Pittsburgh Penguins. 72nd overall. So I just kind of kept 6th round, AA, AAA,
Working your way
6th round, 72nd overall in the world.
Fucking awesome, man.
Just kind of leveling up. Man.
When you went to Pittsburgh, like, what was initial as a rookie? Like, was there any hazing going on? Like, what was going on there?
Yeah. Well, I mean, in junior there was a ton.
Yeah.
There's a ton. Yeah. It's a very like cult-like mentality, right? Like where everything stays in the room. And I never got it. Like we got it. It's funny you mentioned this because actually on Sunday I'm going to Canada because there was I put forth a class action lawsuit against the Canadian Hockey League because we got it like that bad.
Wow.
Yeah. And
damn.
it's just it's rampant. Yeah. It's rampant. And it's
still going on?
Yeah, it still happens. Yeah.
Shit.
And like it's just an old boys club, And one of the things that I pride myself on is like I'm accountable to anybody in my life, to myself, to my kids, right? And that was drilled into me as an athlete where accountability, you better show up ready to play your role on this team. Yeah. So then I look at like the higher ups and nobody's accountable. Everybody's kind of, pushing this stuff under the rug. And so with a platform, luckily I have a platform that I could talk about my own story. I wasn't perfect, passing it on too. Yeah. But hopefully like it's hard enough, man, me moving away at 15 years old, dealing with like totally new high school, new billet family, and then the hazing on top of trying to get drafted to the NHL. It was a lot, but I made it through it, and I'm like really grateful for everything in my life, the hard, the bad, the good, because I don't know if I would have been car bomb in the NHL if like that hazing didn't happen to me. Right? So like,
hold on with that one. Hold on. Let's bring it back a little bit. Yeah, no, it's a testament to your testicular fortitude, right? So with that, now you're with the Penguins. Talk about the nickname.
Yeah.
What happened here?
So it was actually later. So I got drafted in 2003.
Gotcha.
When I was 18. Mario Lemieux was still a player owner.
Okay.
Eddie Olczyk was the coach. There was like Kovalev was there. There was like some legends.
Right.
So you get drafted, you go to training camps.
Yeah.
But then if you don't make the team, you go back to junior. Right?
Okay.
So like you get this taste of NHL
it's similar to
life
baseball too as well. You got a minors
very
and
similar.
shit. Gotcha.
Yep.
Okay.
Very similar. And then once you're old enough, you graduate or you turn 19, then you can turn pro. Okay. So then I go to the AHL, the feeder league, right? So I had a 2-way contract, but I was playing like against guys like in camp, like Sidney Crosby and these types of guys.
Yeah. Damn.
Played a year and a half in the AHL. Now, when I left the OHL, I was 165 pounds soaking wet. I fought maybe 4 times in the league. I scored 30 goals a year. Like I was a player.
Yeah, for sure.
But I knew I was also like, I would smoke guys. So like in hockey, it's very, you're honorable. So like you hit it, you make a big hit, you see it all the time, boom, there's a fight, right?
Yeah.
Somebody sticks up for that guy.
Gotcha.
So that summer I put on 30 pounds.
Wow.
And then I went into the AHL and I knocked out this guy, Kevin Colley, in my first fight. And all these guys knew me as this 165 kid, right? And all these, they're old men. You're playing with, like, there's kids in the room.
Did they recognize you?
Yeah, kind of. I mean, kind of, but they're like, where the fuck did that come from?
Yeah, for
you
sure.
know? And
Did they try to say you were on steroids? 'Cause that's probably the next thing.
Yeah, I mean, maybe I did a half a cycle of Winstrol. I don't know. You know?
And he was in there,
You know? And,
30 pounds, you know, got it.
But I just knew that, like, the way that I played the game and how hard I went, I'm going to have to protect myself.
Yeah.
And I'm going to have to stick up for myself. And then, unfortunately or fortunately, I started just fucking knocking guys out that I should have no business knocking guys out. But I also, like, at that point in my life, I was very reckless. I was very on and off the ice. I was like, I'm going to make a fucking name for myself, and it's going to be me and not you.
Yeah.
And then you kind of get, not pigeonholed, but I used fighting to add that to my resume. You can skate, you can hit, you know, you can shoot, and you'll stick up for yourself and teammates, and you can actually shift the energy of a game with a big hit or a big fight. So
when you, like, as you got more aggressive, we were always aggressive though.
Yeah,
right.
always.
Growing up, when did you make that shift and was like, man, listen, I'm just gonna fight every fucking body? Like, what was it? Was it because you got bigger? Was that it? Did that help?
I was just, like, with everything that happened in junior, on top of the childhood stuff, and I was just fucking, I was lonely, and I was just like, I was fucking angry, you know?
Yeah. You let it out on your opponents.
Yeah, but on the ice. Off the ice, I was, like, very calm and yet very chill, you know, the way that you know me and the way that you know me. I'm just, you know, but, you know, don't mistake, like, kindness for weakness type of thing.
You just turn the switch on.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's honestly, that's kind of what the best fighters do, man.
Right.
You know, they turn the switch on when the time comes to allow us to do what we need to do and not get in trouble for it.
You don't need to, like, it's like talk less, you know, and like you don't need to always be the guy. Usually those people, they're not the guy. Yeah, right. So, so yeah, I mean, I just started fighting, and I started to get a name for myself around the league, and then when that happens, every single fucking guy wants a piece of you. You know, it's like, oh, you're the new kid? Okay, let's try me out.
So, this is crazy, man, because we were out there, we trained.
Yeah.
You were showing me, like,
still can't feel my fucking legs.
Yeah. That happens, don't worry. The techniques on, like, how you actually fight on the ice.
Yeah.
And, like, so it's almost like there's an agreement, right? There's an agreement there.
Yep.
They're like, yeah, we're fighting now.
But
then there's, like, a level of, like, almost like you're a gentleman in a sense, because you're not like elbowing, you're not doing shit dirty. Like, there's a certain level that you can get to.
And when the guy falls, you stop punching.
Yeah, like, usually if you're like a straight savage, you're like, I'm gonna cut this dude with my skate.
Yeah,
shit.
yeah,
like, you know what I mean?
Well, and then trust me, there were some guys where you fucking fish hook them at the bottom of the fucking pool. You don't fucking stop.
That's Happy Gilmore. Right there,
He's
ready
because,
to stab you with my
but you
skate.
only do that to guys that are fucking dirty, right? Like, and that, like, try to go after guys that don't fight. And it's like, all right, you know, if you,
Willies.
you get it back. But
For sure.
I mean, the technique is very, very different than any type of, like, street fighting, any MMA, any type of boxing.
It definitely is. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot of
Leverage too.
leverage, push and pull, right? Grabbing a jersey,
Yep.
you know, blocking the right when somebody's punching, and then trying to get them off balance. Obviously, reach for sure, and then having the balls to stand in there and watch a punch go by your nose so that you can get one in. That's similar to MMA.
Let me ask you this: what's the hardest you've been hit? First of all, on the ice.
Yeah.
And have you knocked people out?
Oh yeah. I've knocked several people out. I've never been knocked out, but I had Jared Bull early in my career, like, when your wires cross.
Yeah.
He got me in the Coyotes, and I kind of just zoom, and then you're back.
Gotcha.
But that was the closest that I'd ever been to getting knocked out. Yeah.
That's crazy. And how many fights have you been in overall in your career?
Over 164. Yeah, I think 164.
How many games?
The only reason I know that is because I have like
You have the record?
no concussion lawsuit against the NHL. So it's like my lawyer's like, hey,
you gotta
did
know
that.
it.
Did you know that you were in 164 fights? Wow.
164.
Just in the NHL. In the AHL, probably like another 50 or 60.
Damn.
So 200.
How many games overall have you played in? You know?
How many what?
How many games overall have you played in?
Around 700.
700.
Yeah.
That's about 30% of your career.
Damn. Bro.
Yeah.
My math's on.
That's like, you just know you're gonna fight in there.
How long did it last?
Yeah.
The fights?
Fights. They shouldn't last that long, all right?
30, 40, 50 seconds.
That's about right. That's like a street fight, in a sense.
Yeah.
About right.
Sometimes longer. Sometimes there's.
They let them go for a while too, right?
Yeah, sometimes there's marathons. Yeah, there's a couple like me and Derek Dorsett, and I always like fighting big guys, because like the young squirrely ones that like to fight, like Dorsett, me and him had a couple battles, but they would go like minute and a half, 2 minutes, where you're like, when you breathe so hard that you taste blood in your throat.
Yeah.
And you're just toast for the rest of the game.
Yeah, it's over now.
Yeah.
Do you have enforcers that are set on the team, like they know exactly who the other enforcers are?
Yeah. So like when I was playing, it was almost the stuff where like sometimes games would start with a line brawl, like just for no fucking reason. Oh yeah, dude.
That's
like
amazing.
you would. So like the coaches, the home coach would know who they're starting. So if they're fucking gonna start their fourth line, which is usually brawlers. Then they would start their fourth line. So fourth line would usually match up against fourth line. Third line's like a grinder line or a checking line, so that would usually match up against the top two lines, which are all offense.
Okay.
But dude, most games, these guys would just like look at each other and just plant and just start. I never liked that. I was never like that, and I always made people come after me. So like there had to be a reason for me to fight you. I'm not just gonna fight you out of just because you want to fight.
Yeah, what was the main reasons why you got into it?
Hits, like if somebody gets
just a dirty hit or something.
Yeah, not even a dirty one. Even if it's
That shit was a little too hard.
yeah. Oh yeah, and you see it all the time.
That's funny, man.
Because you have
it's like people checking them into the board and shit like that,
yeah,
right?
or just like you pass the puck to a guy and there's just and it's a blindside hit. It's your fault because you put the guy in the position, right? You're leading him into this defenseman, and so you're like, oh fuck, okay. Then you got to go and fight that guy because you just, got your guy fucking.
Have you ever fought your teammates?
Yeah, oh yeah. Like in practice, you mean? Fuck yeah, man. Oh yeah. That's like the thing about sports nowadays. Where
I mean, I have plenty of times, so I was just imagining.
For sure, dude.
Definitely.
Like even in practice,
absolutely.
Because you go fucking hard. You practice like you play.
Yeah.
Always.
No,
right?
I used to have to punch people in the face. He knows.
Yeah.
I had to punch people in the face many a time.
But when you guys would like spar, you guys would like you're going 100%.
Oh no, I'm talking about like football and shit like that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I got in fights, high school football, college.
Yeah.
I remember one time like this was on a walkthrough right before our game, right before the game, and the guy like he said something to me and I was just like, whatever, bro, like do what you gotta do. And so he took his helmet off. I'm like, you dumb fuck. Like another person taking his helmet off.
Yeah.
I was like, perfect, go ahead, take your helmet off. Like, and then he ran after me and like I was still boxing, so I knew how to fight since I was a kid.
Yeah.
So he ran after me and tried to tackle me, and I just kind of pushed my hips in, and then I hit him with a couple uppercuts, and then grabbed his head and just slung him down. And when I slung him down, I landed on my ribs. Like his head was in between my ribs and the floor. Ugh. And I just heard, oh, like that. And I was like, oh, I can't breathe. But I'm just like, punching the shit out of him. And they kicked me out of the game, or they kicked me out of the they kicked me off the field, and then I couldn't play the game. So I was like, fuck, man, whatever. But yeah, there's been plenty of times, I could name a few more, but what I want to say is that like, because of the fact that you had the drive, the determination, and like for me in general, like I know that if my teammates aren't upholding a certain level of effort and quality, I'm gonna get after you because you're hurting the entire system. You're hurting my team and you're hurting me.
Absolutely.
So I understand that. That's why I asked. I was I'm pretty sure you did that.
And it's like, it's not, most hockey guys, they know, right? Like we grow up, you fucking have to go hard, right? And some guys have off days and stuff. It was more so like, dude, like there'd be puck battles where you just coaches would, you line up here and you flip the puck in the corner and whoever fucking comes out gets. And some guys you match up and like you beat a guy 2-3 times. Well, and I was like, all right, you're starting to embarrass me, so I'm gonna fucking come hard, even though he's your teammate and you're not trying to like take his knees or anything like that, but you're just a man and you gotta fucking step it up sometimes and it gets a little egregious.
Do you fight on the ice or have you gotten fights in the locker room and shit too?
Everywhere.
Yeah, me too.
Everybody
can
get
Oh yeah.
It doesn't
well,
matter.
especially with like the junior stuff and the hazing, man. There were so many times where I just fucking snapped.
I'm sure. Yeah.
And I just, on the bus.
It's unnecessary.
Like,
It's super unnecessary to do that anyway. So I understand that.
But it's a part of the culture. It was a part of the culture back then, It really was. It was ingrained, and we've talked about this. Like abuse is hard to stop. Like when it's happened to you, you just think it's normal, and you're going to do it to the next guy and the next guy and the next guy. So I really don't blame the guys because it was fucking normal, But like all the fucking adults knew, so it's like the coaches knew, everybody. They actually participated, so that's where I get a little.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. They're supposed to be there to stop that shit.
Yeah. And it's not conducive to a fucking team. I could never understand why. Like we're supposed to be tight, like a tight knit community in a group, because it's hard, man. Like getting together like 25 guys and 22 guys playing every night towards a common goal, and we play 82 fucking games a year, over 184 days plus travel.
Yeah, it's a lot. You're with them a lot. You're with them a lot.
Yeah, man. So I'd rather have it be like a cohesive unit.
Did it ever get to that point where it felt like it was cohesive?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, of course. Like even that year, there were still times where it was great, And I've been lucky. I was really lucky, especially towards the end of my career, to play on really amazing fucking teams. Like I went to the Stanley Cup Finals 4 times in my last 5 years with 3 different teams, and I won twice.
That's awesome.
So like to see, and the only reason what separates those teams from other teams that don't win or get there is like a core group of vets that hold everybody
accountable
to a fucking to a very high fucking standard.
For sure.
And if you're not there, you're fucking gone in a week, man. That's how quickly you get traded.
I feel like that's every successful team, in a lot of ways. Like they have to have good guidance, they have to have leadership, they have to have a system in place, and everybody has to play their part.
Team or business, anything.
Absolutely.
Like if you look at, or any successful society or family units or,
hierarchy.
Yeah. And it's such a team sport, hockey, but it's also very individualized because you have to have your shit together every single night, even if you're out of the lineup. Because then, if you're not prepared for the opportunity, then you go into the game and you're not up to that standard. Then you're fucking out again. And you might not ever get another shot. So it's you're always in this fight mode. And I just never knew how to fight. It was
always go after it.
Go.
Was the season? I'm pretty sure this is true, but the season probably was very stressful, right? At the end of the day, just because. Non-stop games.
Early
fighting.
On, it's fun.
Yeah, when you're younger too, and you're like ready to go.
Yeah. Or just early in seasons, like the first 20 games. Because everyone's like fucking getting back from the summer. Even at pro, it's kind of like that's when all the guys go after all their cookies. Like there's tons of goals scored. Because then towards the end of the season, everything fucking tightens up. Because it's playoffs and it's more defense oriented. But
that's interesting.
Yeah.
So all right, so now going into it, you're professional, doing well, fighting everybody. Okay, where did all of this, like concussions and things like that nature, how did that all happen? And then what happened after that in relation to the concussions?
Yeah, so my first 5 years in the league, I had 5 concussions. I don't remember them at all.
Back to back, or was it like
Honestly, I
Don't know.
fucking don't know.
Yeah.
You know, I remember my last two, and that was in my last 5 years. But like I was just, again, I was living a very fast life. Like, so I was, you know, I was taking opiates, and I was drinking a ton, and I was not good to myself, to people around me, and it was showing up in like a lot of injuries. That's when I blew my ACL. Like, but then I had an aha moment at 25. I asked for help after I had 2 surgeries back to back in 10 days. Got prescribed some hydrocodone oxys, and like it just took me down on top of like all the other trauma.
Yeah.
Because it just numbed everything out. It was fucking amazing. But so then at 25, I asked for help. And then I got introduced to, like, before I would just slam a case of beer to go to bed after a game. Yeah. And I got introduced to breath work, to meditation, to like journaling, to like being in touch with myself and knowing when something's off and then how to fix it with not by numbing it out, but by like breathing into it, you know, and like getting into it. Yep. And so when I did that at 25, when I asked for help, that's when everything changed in my life. Like, I started eating better. One of my best friends came into my life. He's no longer with us, but Steve Monador. Steve, yeah, and he had 19 concussions in the NHL. So what started happening was like these guys were getting older. There were a lot of guys that passed away in a very short amount of time, like 3 years. I think there were 7 or 8 guys. And almost all of them had CT.
Oh, man.
So I was like, oh, fuck. And then the whole NFL stuff in 2013 was coming out. And I just knew, and I felt, and I saw symptoms in myself, you know?
Explain a little bit more about the symptoms.
So more irritability.
Yeah.
Very hard to control my impulses, like on the ice, off the ice. Sleep was fucking always terrible, like insomnia. I never ever had anxiety or depression, or at least I didn't think, I wasn't clinically diagnosed, but I look back on it now, I'm like, holy shit, did I ever have it? Like, it was present. Headaches, head pressure, you know, just different stuff, loss of appetite.
Dizziness?
Yeah, no, actually, no. I didn't have the dizziness.
Okay.
I didn't have the dizziness part. You know, it shows up differently in some people. Yeah.
Yeah, man. Like, for me, light bothers me, and then if I walk through aisles, like close, like a grocery store aisles or whatever, I'll start to get like vertigo.
Okay. And maybe I didn't because I always had to be, like, my vestibular system was always dialed because I was on these fucking thin steel skates all the time. You
That's
know what
true.
I mean? So
that
maybe
makes sense.
But yeah, so I started seeing these symptoms. I honestly started to like be less engaged in the game because I was starting to get tired of it.
Sure,
like,
that makes
you
sense.
know?
Yeah, you've been in it for a while then.
Yeah, big time. And then Steve got cleared for 4 concussions in 12 weeks. It was his 16th, 17th, 18th, and 19th documented concussion.
12 weeks?
Yeah, in a professional league.
Oh my goodness, man.
And I watched him. So when I came to the team at 25, when I got better, Steve was sober for 7 years, so he showed me everything, man. He showed me how to live a fucking happy, fulfilling. This motherfucker, tons of talent, like you, like good looking fucking dude, good charisma. Yeah. Everybody wanted to be around him. It's like, okay, how do I get a little bit of that? You know? Yeah. But then after those concussions, completely changed, you know, and I saw it, and I tried my best to help him. He was out of the game for 1.5 years, and then he passed away. His anniversary was on the 15th, and 8 years, which is crazy. Yeah. And so then I saw the same things in me. Earlier in the year, I had my son born. I didn't want to be an absent father. My dad worked a lot. Nothing wrong with that. That's the way he showed his love. Yeah. I wanted to be there. So then I made a call to arms, said that we need better protocols, we need better treatments. Like, we take care of our body, like what you do. We don't ever train the brain or protect the brain or rehabilitate the brain. And the brain is the computer that operates everything, the fast twitch muscle, all this stuff. There's tons of studies that show like if you have a brain injury, you're more susceptible to like pulling your ACL or tearing your ACL. It's like, so started to see all this stuff, and I'm like, you know, I think I'm done. So I
What year was this?
2015. I was 30.
30?
30 years old.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then that's when the real battle started.
Yeah.
It was, with no purpose. Definitely like some early onset dementia.
I was just talking about that too.
Right.
Athletic identity.
I went down fast.
Mm-hmm.
And you're in your wife's life. She's used to you being on the road every other day.
Yeah.
And you're fucking up her routine.
Yeah.
Gotta
So, right? So, like, there's a lot of tension.
Mm-hmm.
And she now sees me as a completely different person, right? And, and just like I'm an asshole. And
Why though? Why is that?
just all the symptoms, you know? Like, but I was trying to manage it. I'm not the type of person to, like, burden people with, oh, I got this going on.
Yeah.
I was just trying to...
Like inside, you were trying to manage it.
Yeah, everything. And I was like...
Internally is crazy.
15 symptoms. A 5-symptom day was like fucking awesome.
Wow.
You know, but most of the time it was like 10 or 15.
We got a light day today, guys.
Yeah. Light work today. And I didn't want to be around her friend. I didn't want to be around anybody. I'm a little bit of an introvert, but when I'm my healthiest, I'm like, I am outgoing and I like being around. I like feeding off of people's energy.
Yeah.
And so I knew that I needed help.
Okay.
You know? And so that's when I started to like, I think that's why my wife's an angel, but that's why she stayed with me, because it wasn't like I was going to like just sit on the couch and fucking, woe is me. I was going to neurological centers. I was spending my money going to CT brain banks. I was spending my money on supplements. I was doing hyperbaric chambers, float tanks, holistic treatments. I was trying everything that I could. I was doing ocular training, vestibular training. Like, this is why me and Nick drive so much, because like of the science of the brain. You don't have to be a doctor to like listen to these people and absorb this information and then just understand.
Awareness.
Yeah, and what works for you and what doesn't.
Yeah.
So that carried on for about 5 years, and I'd spent about $500,000, and I was like, I was kind of getting better, but then I'd go back, and then I'd get better, and I'd go back, and then nobody would look at like my hormones, these clinics, right? Because it's like, well, no, come into the clinic and do the ocular and vestibular training. And in my head, I'm like, why isn't anybody looking at like what my body's naturally doing? And I knew the pituitary gland sits in a rigid part of your skull, and started reading papers and PubMed papers. I'm like, all right, that makes sense. Like, let me test my hormones. These guys won't do it.
Yeah.
So I started doing that, and every 6 months I would change modalities, diagnostics, check my brain blood.
Okay.
And I just got to a point where I was like, you lose hope when you think you try everything, you know, and there's no other treatments to try.
Yeah.
This was right around 2019.
Okay.
And I started seeing all these studies coming out on like psychedelics, mainly psilocybin, the active ingredient in magic mushrooms. My former teammate, I was also going very hard at the NHL because, you know, they withheld information similar to the NFL. So I was angry, sitting on my couch, you know, not doing much, and still no real purpose, like just being a dad, you know, which was difficult in its own right.
For sure.
Took this invitation to go to Denver, almost skipped the flight. Probably wouldn't be here if I did.
Yeah.
And I took 5 grams of magic mushrooms. You know, psilocybin is the active ingredient. I woke up the next morning, and the only way I could describe it is feeling the way I should. I had this little inkling of feeling how I was before I left home for junior, before I really started taking all the abuse and the big hits and the hazing and all that stuff that obviously can put you on a different path, addiction and anger. And then for 2 weeks, man, my wife's like, what is going on? Like, I was sleeping.
Oh, wow.
I could go outside without the glasses. I had the sunlight sensitivity too. Walked out on the farm on the second or third day, and I was like, oh, fuck. And I tried to go. Immediately I would get a headache. Nothing. I was fine.
Like, wait a minute.
Yeah, I'm like, am I okay?
Yeah.
I felt creative again. Nice. I felt like I wanted to live.
That's cool.
And so all these symptoms started to lessen in intensity or fade away. It's like, what the fuck is this? So then I started research. They were putting people under fMRI fMRI, just measuring the brain, brain connectivity, and I started to see the things that these doctors in the clinics were telling me they could do, which was identify the area of my brain shut down due to trauma. Concussion's not on the whole brain, right? It's usually on two areas.
Sections and shit, yeah.
And then I saw all these like connections being made, and it happened with like $5 worth of mushrooms. And
there's a reason why my ancestors liked those mushrooms.
Yeah, for sure they did, man. I mean, well, and your ancestors would use them for different reasons, not only to cure the sick, right, but they would use it in battle, because it heightens your visual acuity, your auditory sensations, like everything, man. It's, I mean, a lot of fighters take it when they're fighting because they can see, they can almost read things
it does.
Coming.
It's
right?
clarity for sure.
Yeah. I knew nothing gets fixed in 5 hours, so I worked with this PhD biochemist to do a microdose. Right, you can't hallucinate all the time, and we put CBD in it, right, which is minimally processed, and then we did like lion's mane, increasing BDNF, reishi, cordyceps, immunity,
all the adaptogens,
Yep.
Nice.
Added turmeric and piperine to activate it, and then 6 months later, I tested my brain blood before I went, tested it after, no abnormalities in my brain scans.
Awesome.
Like blood work was completely clear. And I'm like, holy shit.
How did that affect? I don't want to go hormones now because I'm thinking about testosterone and concussions, and there is some
Absolutely,
some correlation there.
Absolutely.
How did that affect your testosterone levels in general?
I had the free testosterone of a 72-year-old male before I did the psilocybin. My cortisol levels were 6 times as much as the average male my age.
Were you at a heightened state of cortisol at that point?
Big time.
Yeah.
I was stuck in that fight mode.
Yeah.
I just couldn't calm down. My nervous system was, and that's a special sauce of psilocybin too, right? It what it does is it works on the default mode network on the brain. And so for a moment, more than a moment, usually hours, you're everywhere that like Daru thinks he is from either the good things, the trauma, the schooling, the learning from the childhood, all of the things that make you, that gets shut off. So you're able to, if you don't like who you are, you're able to shut this part of your brain, and you're able to, this is why there's a lot of preparation and integration. You're able to tell yourself a different story. And you come out of these ceremonies feeling like a new person. But it just made me stress less. It made me feel more connected to myself, to my wife, to my kids, to nature, to just everything.
That's cool.
It helped me reconcile all the bad things that I thought happened, but made me realize those were necessary for me to get to this point. And then I just started to like talk about it, even though it's a Schedule I substance, it's illegal, but there were so many studies, and there's still studies coming out through the FDA, and it's breakthrough therapy designation. So I thought, if the FDA is saying this, then it's going to be a medicine soon. So.
Yeah. How far along are we to get to that level?
So Compass Pathway is in phase 2 with the FDA using a synthetic derivative of psilocybin. They're probably 3-4 years out, to having like actual medicine.
Yeah.
The problem with that, well, I shouldn't say the problem, they're going after a very specific indication. So if you or myself don't have major depressive disorder, I won't be able to get access to that psilocybin. But the good thing is, I've worked on policy, statewide legislation, so you can go to the states and start influencing things like adult therapeutic use programs.
Yeah.
So I helped get Measure 109 passed in Oregon, where we decriminalized cacti, MDMA, psilocybin, and an African root plant called ibogaine. And then we created this framework within the state so that people don't have to fly to Jamaica, Costa Rica, like all of these unregulated markets.
Yeah.
And they can go to Oregon once licenses open up in the fall and take psilocybin. And you're not a patient, right? Like you would be with a major depressive disorder. You're a client. So you can go there just to expand your consciousness if you want.
Oh, wow.
You can go there and take it to
relax. fucking.
Yeah, dude, just
relax.
like, yeah.
So that's another thing, and Nick, you can probably expand on this. How does one get clinically diagnosed with depression?
Subjective indicators, sometimes it's objective.
Yeah.
One of the biggest ones is physical changes. Are you eating less, eating more, gaining weight, losing weight?
So it's subjective, basically.
Clinical, because I remember I was in school for clinical psychology, and
Yeah.
one of the classes I took was psychopathology, where you literally learn every disorder from the DSM-5, and you have to memorize all the indicators. And for depression, there's
What is
9.
it, the Madras scale? Is that what they use?
There's a few different ones, but I guess there's 9 indicators, such as loss of weight 5 pounds, gain of weight 5 pounds, a strong change in your social life. Are you doing the common things you used to do? Are you going to work? Are you getting out of bed? So I could ask you that if I'm your psychologist.
Yeah, there's
I
no
can ask you that.
physiological explanation.
There is, but they're not using those. That's kind of what I wanted to ask. Why is there such a big push, like say, using depression? Obviously, that's an extreme, but this could help us in day-to-day function versus things that are like allowed. Is that because of the pharmaceutical industry?
No, it's because of the war on drugs. So when Nixon started the war on drugs, right, and scheduled, think about it. 2 of these Schedule 1 drugs, Schedule 1, the definition is there's no medicinal value, and they're highly addictive. Marijuana is a Schedule 1. Psilocybin is a Schedule 1. These things grow freely out of nature. So the government said those 2 things, and primarily because they imprison. They found a way with this for-profit jail system to imprison black and brown communities that loved marijuana and psilocybin. So we are seeing now, and like I said, man, dude, they've been using these compounds for tens of thousands of years, probably. Like the where mushrooms grow, this mycelium network is the largest bacterial network on Earth. Like it makes up all of our soil that we're now depleting by spraying it with glyphosate and all this bullshit. So the war on drugs happened, and then there's so much money being made. So the thinking is, if you start without an indication is depression, anxiety, and you say, well, let's go after human consciousness, then the government's going to say, well, this is the fucking 60s all over again. Timothy Leary, and like, fuck that. Let's put that shit back in a box. We're not going to allow you to develop it. So we start with these indications, where major depressive disorder is a classification that you've tried 2 or 3 other treatments and nothing works. So you are now classified as major depressive disorder. You get these approved, then you can start opening up state programs. Then you can start talking about expanding consciousness or working out. Like how beneficial these things are as neuro anti-inflammatory agents.
At the moment right now, microdosing is illegal.
Absolutely. Yep.
Is it going to be legalized in Colorado, Oregon, in those states?
You can go there. Yeah. So Measure 109 passed. Right now what we're doing, or people are doing, and myself included, you can apply for an application, right?
Gotcha.
For a service center. Or you can apply for a manufacturing, so you can actually grow the magic mushrooms to a standard, or you can test them, or you can become a facilitator. Facilitator means essentially a therapist that's going to sit with somebody, right, and take them through the ceremony.
Similar to a shaman.
Absolutely.
Primarily, yeah.
So set and setting are really important, right? So this is experiential medicine. So the set intention that you have in your mind for why you want to do this is extremely important.
Absolutely.
And you'll always get what you want from these mushrooms. It's amazing. And then the setting with which you do it in is also just as paramount. If you take, most people that have these bad trips, they take 3 grams of mushrooms and they go to a concert. Do not do that.
You want to be in a safe spot, right?
Yeah.
Be comfortable.
Quiet, right?
Gotcha.
Like when you're on higher doses. You can do that on a microdose, absolutely. You'll have a great time, right? So it's very dose dependent, setting dependent, your mindset, why you're doing it. And if you can prepare with the right person that you feel comfortable with, who can advise you on the right dose based off of your set intention and who you are and your age. This is metabolism driven. It's not milligram per kilogram like most medicines. Man, you can have amazing fucking breakthroughs. Amazing breakthroughs which last. John Hopkins has a study where I believe it was a study on alcoholics. 2 years later, I think over 40% of the respondents still hadn't drank. Like one dose.
Alcohol really breaks down the neuron connections.
Absolutely. But now you're talking about a cure.
Yeah, definitely.
That's like
that word.
Oh
That
man,
is
that's a dangerous word. This is like, wait a minute.
Can't make
You
money
don't get
off
it
the
shut
cure.
down already. Come on now. They already shut this episode down.
But everybody looks at, it's funny, like, what are the side effects?
Yeah.
Because there's usually a lot of side effects with other medicines because that's how they can then.
Antidepressants.
The side effect is that you hallucinate. You know, the side effect is that you have to surrender to what this medicine is going to show you.
Yeah.
That's fucking difficult for a lot of people.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, it becomes either a very great experience or not so great experience.
Yeah.
Right? I think people are just afraid of that.
Yeah.
Primarily.
Yeah.
You got to put yourself in the right position. You got to know. You got to be in the right headspace to a degree, and be with somebody that knows what they're doing.
And you don't force it on people. You know what I mean? Like, people know. I talk about it because I know that it can save a lot of lives. But the people that hear the message, they need to hear the message, right? I don't talk about it all the time. I only talk about it when I'm asked.
Sure.
You know, because you get called to it. Like if people are asking me about mushrooms, that means there's not necessarily something wrong, but there's an itch that they want to scratch, you know?
Yeah, no, I've done microdosing before, and I mean, at the end of the day, like I felt clear, like I felt happy, you know, and more so, and for me, because of everything that I'm doing, and I think a large amount has to do with me having the concussions too as well.
Absolutely.
So brain fog and things of that nature comes into play, and I can't have that. You know, I have to be on point all the time.
Sharp.
So this is something that we could definitely utilize. How much though, and how frequent can you actually use it from a microdosing standpoint?
So it's just dependent on the individual, right? So usually what people do is you got to find the dose that works for you.
Yeah.
So if you're microdosing, it's a subperceptual dose, so non-hallucinogenic. So if you're taking a dose and you're coming into the gym and you're, you know, seeing your logo talking to you.
That shit's popped out already, man.
You took too much.
What's going on here?
Dial it back, you know? So usually what people do is they'll start between like 0.1 of a milligram, extremely low, so 10% of a gram. And then if they're not really feeling anything after kind of 8 administrations, I always tell people just try it.
Bump it.
Not one time, right? Like try it, you know, 8 or 9 or 10 times. If that's not doing anything, then bump it up by like 0.025, right? Or you could bump it up to 0.2. And then if you're seeing stuff, bump it back down to 0.1. And if that's your sweet spot where you're not too edgy and, you know, sometimes you see people like these guys who are talking about microdosing, their eyes are like, it's like, buddy, like,
it's a little too much.
Dial it back.
Back it down, dog.
And then you always, I always advise people to take a break, right? So there's a bunch of different protocols. You could take it 5 days on, 2 days off. You could do every other day. You could do 3 days on, 4 days off. You could do, like, there's the Jim Fadiman program, which is, you know, dose on day 1, day off on day 2, rest day on day 3, dose again on day 4. And again, it's just dependent on how people feel. For me, and maybe for you, I had a lot of fucking damage, man. Not only concussions, with subconcussive hits, and
of course.
you know. So it's been 5 years, and I will continue to do things in my life or use tools that work for me. This tool, it's one tool, because like you work out, you know,
multiple.
I ride bike, like I still meditate, etc. Try to eat well. It's a tool that I'll continue to use as long as I feel good, you know, and as long as my blood keeps coming back clear. And there's a whole spiritual side to it that, you know, I could sit here and talk for hours about it, right? Where these medicines come from, these genetics, that come from the earth. And I truly believe that they want the best for us, right? They're here to, there's a reason that we're all talking about, society's talking about these new medicines. We've just gone down.
There's a reason
really
why it's
bad
actually
path.
on this earth, you know what I mean? There has to be a reason, you know?
Absolutely.
Makes sense.
Absolutely. And it opens you up to new ideas, new thoughts, you know?
In your blood work, what did you see a difference in when you started doing this?
Free testosterone, you know. I had very low energy, like fatigue. My free testosterone was that of a 72-year-old male at 31 or 32. And then my cortisol, stress hormone, super high.
You think that, I mean, was it the microdosing, or was it because you were in a better mental state that you were able to bring down your cortisol?
I think after the first big dose that I did on the farm, I was able to just take a breath. One thing that happened in the ceremony, so the medicine will kind of like show you what's wrong in your life, right? So it was like, man, it was 3 hours of fucking hell. Like, you know, everybody talks, oh, it's great. It's like, buddy, it's gonna show you what's wrong because you're asking it, right? I was suicidal. I'm like, what's going on? Show it to me. Make me suffer. And then usually it then, you know, massages it in, and then it loves you and hugs you. And that's exactly what happened. So I was in this farm. I was going around in a loop. I was screaming. I was dry heaving. So you always fast before. I was like, what is this? And you know, these guys were trying to calm me down. They put their hand on my shoulder. When someone would put their hand on my wife always says my love language is like touch. So this hand felt like God. Like, oh, wow, that was nice. And then, you know, but then I would walk away. And I do that in my life too. Like I like to torture myself for whatever reason, even sometimes when I'm feeling good, you know? So then I was lost, you know, and I was lost in my life. I had no purpose. I was like, you know, I was unhealthy. And so then they finally calmed me down, and we sat on a couch. They put on 432 hertz music, which is the frequency in nature. And then I started to feel good. And my former teammate had this long curly hair during his career. He had it cut. But I looked over at him, and he was like reincarnated like Jesus with this long curly hair again. And he looked at me, and he said, I'm like, oh, I'm like starting to feel better. This is pretty amazing. He's like, good. He's like, this is why we wanted you here. We want you on this team. We wanted to like activate you, you know? And I said, I'm like, why me? I'm such a fucking loser. And he's like, no, man. He's like, you're not. Like, we love you. You know, we want you here. And I was like, as soon as I heard that, it was like, everything opened up. And I was just like, oh, God. It was like this warm, beautiful fucking next 2 hours was unbelievable. Like,
do you remember the next 2 hours?
Oh, yeah.
Did they go by fast, or was it?
This podcast is brought to you by Vivo Barefoot. Now check out vivobarefoot.com. That's the minimalistic shoe that I've been rocking on all my videos. If you've been watching my Instagram and YouTube, those are the shoes that I've been wearing to help my foot gain full foot functionality, strengthen up the intrinsic muscles of the feet to allow myself to perform better, and then also reduce the risk of injury. Now I personally like the Geo Racer Knit and the Primus Light 3. Check them out. Go to vivobarefoot.com and get the discount code DARU15 to get 15% off your final purchase. All right, now let's get on to the podcast.
Yeah, time dilates, right? So like 5 hours could feel like one, you know, or 5 hours could feel like 15.
Depending.
You know, no, it was an amazing experience. The only way I can describe it is, so like when you hug your kids, right? You know, you ever get that feeling of like that beam, you know, like unconditional love, they feel it. And we lose that feeling. That's the feeling that it gives you. It was like, bam, like just giving that to me. And I lost that, like big time lost that, you know, and then all of a sudden I stopped calling myself a loser, you know, and I stopped negatively talking to myself, and I started to like uplift myself, you know, not right away, over the course of like the next year, completely shifted everything in my mindset.
So now with this, you wanted to help people, right?
Oh, yeah.
It's helped you. Where you at now with it?
Try to give it away for free, you know, like information for sure, as
absolutely.
much as I can. And you know, just connecting people with other shamans or medicine people, because who has 3 or 4 years to wait?
Is this like a program that you're doing? Or?
Yeah, so what happened was, when I got this recovery, then I started to do the policy work. So first we started in Washington, D.C., and we got a whole bunch of compounds decriminalized. And then I started to work on the statewide legislation. And then I started to think like, okay, I could help thousands of people here.
That's cool.
I also want to work on a medicine. Right? There's no medicine that is prescribable for traumatic brain injury. So we get prescribed, you know, Wellbutrin and all these antidepressants for our depression, which then increase the headaches and bring on.
Makes it worse.
Like, oh my gosh! So I wanted to create.
It's a Band-Aid at the most.
Absolutely. So I wanted to create something through the FDA, and so I know how to build a team and play on a team. So I went out and got with the help of Rick Doblin, MAPS. So MAPS is in phase 3 with the FDA using MDMA for PTSD. It's an amazing tool. They were using it in the 60s, shuts down the amygdala area of the brain, fear response. So you're able to like visit trauma, like sexual trauma or like war trauma, things that you can talk about them. Oh yeah, man, it's.
What the interesting thing about all this is when you go to like regular talk therapy, they're trying to do these same things, but it just seems that with this medicine, it's physiologically.
Maybe you can. Why is that? Like, why can't you? Why won't your body or your subconscious allow you to access that trauma and deal with it? Like just without something like MDMA or.
It's a defense mechanism in my opinion. You know, it doesn't want to feel that pain again.
Right.
So it shuts it down and pushes it away.
Physiologically is rewiring itself because you know neurons that wire together fire together. Right?
Yeah.
So now it's like to the point, every memory or that's stored, it's not accessible anymore and just goes away. And like you said with the ceremonies, you're getting that unlocking it because it's basically like with like dreams, right? I'm not saying it's like that. Is it? Kind of.
You are in like you could be in like a dream state for sure. Not with MDMA, but psilocybin for sure. Yeah.
So the reason I bring that up is because it's like when we go to sleep, everyone talks about dreams. Dreams have a very deep purpose because it plays out either things we want or things we need to solve in our head. But the thing is, you can't control a dream.
Right. With
these ceremonies, it seems as if you can lead into what you're trying to address.
Yeah.
So it's like getting to the point. Like I'm not knocking therapy because obviously, like I said, that was my background.
And therapy is a part of this. Like it's called psilocybin assisted therapy, MDMA assisted therapy. Honestly, the therapy part is the most crucial. Like because you're only doing the medicine for like 3 to 5 hours, and then what you do with the lessons that you see, you don't integrate them into your life or have somebody that can help you do that. You're just doing drugs, in my opinion.
Well, it seems like you need one and you need both.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, you can't have one without the other.
No,
you know,
not with high dose.
Yeah.
Right? And even with the low doses, like it really does help a lot of aspects of your life. And if you could have a coach there to help guide you, right? Like, oh, this came up today and well, why is that? You know, talk it through. Therapy's massive. So you have MDMA and then you have psilocybin, and I went to Rick, I started getting on the circuit and started to tell my story to these guys, and they're like, man, you have to do something with this. So I said, well, I don't know any drug developers, you know, and they're like, well, here, I'll introduce you to some. So I started to talk to a team. I patented the method of use. So in drug development, it's really hard to start a company and raise money if you don't have intellectual property. Yeah. So I patented the method that I used with the milligram amounts, et cetera. And then founded a company. We raised $16 million, and we took it public on the CSE, Canadian Stock Exchange, within 4 months.
Awesome.
And then this past March 11th, we talked to the FDA, and it's called a pre-IND meeting. So it's a new drug application. And what you do is you submit a plan, and like we were submitting a combination pill of 2 Schedule ones, so CBD and psilocybin. And so like all my drug developers are like super nervous, and you know, they're like, I don't know how this is gonna go.
Yeah.
And we got an amazing response from the FDA.
Nice.
You know, so that's mainly what I'm focused on right now.
Yep.
And
What's the company called again?
We Sauna Health. Yeah. So Sauna is Latin for heal.
Yep.
And then we heal together, like the concussion community, MMA community. It's like,
Yeah, for sure.
it's awesome, right? Like you trade off information and you try to help support people as best you can.
Every time, man, when it comes to athletes at contact sports, like we always have that bond, you know?
Yeah,
like,
always.
You know.
I
You don't
know
even
you.
gotta say anything.
Yeah, I know
It's
you.
just like,
No.
it's a connection.
It's like your boy that like you haven't seen in, you know, like
sure.
3 years, and then you go and hang with him, like, oh man, I remember this.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah, that's cool.
So yeah, that, still working on policy. I believe in, this is what I believe, three avenues, right? I believe in decriminalizing these medicines because they should not be Schedule Ones. There is medicinal value. There's, I think, like 18 medical marijuana programs.
Yeah.
You know,
How many studies are out there right now? Do you know?
there's a lot.
Yeah.
And there was a ton of studies done in the 60s and 70s, man, before the war on drugs happened, before they shut it down. There's thousands of studies done on alcoholism. Could you imagine how many tens of millions of lives could have been saved
Yeah.
if they didn't do that war on drugs and they kept doing these studies that showed amazing efficacy? You're talking about 67% of people using MDMA for PTSD. They no longer qualify. 67% of these people for a PTSD diagnosis.
Yeah.
Up to like, I think, months later.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable. It's unheard of.
For sure.
Nobody's ever seen that type of data.
So what is the next step for you to get this thing going? And
well,
rolling deeper. you
yeah,
know,
oh
'cause
yeah,
it's
yeah.
going, but now let's get it
Just more.
next level.
Just
Yeah.
more. Like, so I'm the CEO of a publicly traded company right now. So there's certain things that I can say and I can't say.
Of course, yeah.
And that's
Which
frustrating.
is congratulations, by the way. That's a big fucking deal, bro.
Thank you.
know,
Thank
awesome.
you. No, but it's also, thank you, but it's also frustrating because like, it's just, I'm a free bird, you know, like one of the reasons I hated hockey is because like they make you look a certain way, dress a certain way, talk a certain way, you know, and I would like just go against the grain. I just want to be myself, you know? So I'm getting back to more education awareness, educating people, talking about this more, giving it away for free to keep what you have. That's what I learned through like AA and when I got sober, right? So there's that, and then Oregon's really important to me with the adult therapeutic use because people can use it now, right? And they don't have to go to these unregulated markets, and they don't necessarily know what they're getting, and it could be unsafe.
Yeah.
My policy work is really important. We're doing another briefing with Melissa Lavisani and the Psychedelic Medicine Coalition on Capitol Hill. So we did one a couple months ago, which is like, you know, this Canadian guy, like, know nothing about politics, but, you know, talking to these.
You're in there, though.
Yeah.
You're in there.
Because we need more funding for research, right? We need more bills passed because the scheduling of a drug, because it's Schedule 1, there's so much red tape to take it through the FDA and research it, like I'm doing with WeSauna.
Yeah.
You could do it if it's not scheduled, like you can cut your timeline down to like 2.5, 3 years. But because it's scheduled, it's going to take us 5, 6, you know?
Yeah.
So all of it, man.
It's all positive, though. It's all positive.
Big
It's in
time.
in the right direction, you know, and in due time.
Yeah,
Definitely.
and the FDA is necessary because it's the most rigorous scientific pathway there is, right? And there's so many people that go to their doctor to get their information and their drugs. The only way that you can get the medicine into the hands of those people is by going through the FDA. So there's just like necessary steps that you have to do, no matter how slow, how fast. I'm fucking willing to put the work in, you know?
You're doing it, man. We'll keep it going. We'll keep the word out there.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Keep pushing it. Hope
For
this
sure.
podcast helps a little bit.
No, I'm sure it will. I
And-
know, listen, man, I would never name them, but there's a ton of athletes
Oh, yeah.
that are microdosing.
Oh, I believe it. I know it.
Taking
Oh, I know it.
CBD
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
it's a patented neuroprotectant.
I'm going to be honest. Like, that that was one of the things, like, and I'm not a big drug guy. Like, I never had like an aspiration to even smoke weed.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not even a big like stimulant guy either. I do a lot of caffeine now because I'm just trying to stay awake, trying to do all this shit. But like, yeah, I'm not an addicted person. I mean, obviously, maybe you could call me training addiction, whatever.
Yeah.
But that right there is
a
healthy addiction. But that right there is like, I never had a problem with it. Like, I never was like, I wouldn't be addicted to this, but I do like the feeling. Right? And sometimes I don't like the feeling of being high. Sometimes I don't like the feeling of being drunk, like having like a drink and just being like all over the place.
Yeah.
This right here, I'm good. Like, I like to be, I'm the type of person that I like to not be in control, but have focus.
Yeah.
If I'm focused and I can feel good, that's a win-win for me.
Yeah, man.
You know?
Clarity, dude. I mean,
clarity, that's it.
The biggest thing that this, in a nutshell, if people always, it just allows you to be in the present moment, more present.
Exactly.
Shuts down that animal brain that's always fucking thinking about our thoughts or thinking about what's happening or thinking way too far into the future.
Yeah.
It makes me a better person in my experience.
For sure. Man, we're gonna have you on again.
Yeah,
I want to go deeper into different things.
I don't know about the workout again, but
we'll do that too. We're gonna get that one on camera next time. Yeah, you did good, man. You know, professional athlete, bro. You're good. You got it.
I just got to start weight training again, you know.
So let them know where they can find you. WeSauna, everything.
Yeah. So WeSaunaHealth.com, Daniel Carcillo 13 on Instagram, Carbon Boom 13 on Twitter, Facebook, Daniel Carcillo, LinkedIn, same thing.
Nice.
Yeah.
Perfect.
All the regular channels.
Nick Davenport, go ahead.
You find me, you probably got sick of me now, but Mr. Nick Muscle, find me there, Mind Body One.
All right. Make sure you guys give us a rating and also subscribe to the YouTube channel if you haven't done so. Thanks so much for your support. We're going to have Daniel on again. Trust me. And I'll see you again next time.